Hi everybody, this is John here.
This is Paul.
George.
And Ringo.
And we're very happy to be on your program once again.
Hello everyone and welcome to show number 78 of Beatle News Briefs. I'm your host Steve Marinucci and this is your home for all the news you need to know and the best talk from the Beatles world. Today we'll be talking with Charles Rosenay, the founder of Good Day Sunshine, and who I think you all know for his Beatle-related events, including his tribute concerts and his tours. Today, though, we'll be talking about the upcoming tribute, not to the Beatles, but to the Monkees and to his friend, the Monkees' Peter Tork, which will be held in Connecticut on February 8th. We'll discuss his longtime friendship with Peter, and he'll give us some memories of being with him and what he was like. Here's our talk with Charles. Take a listen and we'll have more after the interview, so don't go away. I'd like to welcome to Beatle News Briefs my longtime friend Charles Rosenay. Hello, Mr. Rosenay. Long time no talk to.
Hi, Steve. So great to talk to you again.
I know. I mean, it seems like we don't do this often enough. And actually, today we're going to do something a little different. Charles has an event coming up. Why don't you first tell the people what the event is?
Well, it's a Monkees convention and Peter Tork memorial event. People who know how much I love the Beatles, some also know that I've always been a huge Monkees fan, and I've been very involved with Monkees fandom since the late 70s and early 80s, kind of a little after I started doing all the Beatle things. But in 2013, we did a memorial Monkees convention for Davy Jones, and it was a big to-do, 3-day, Meadowlands, 100 guests, that kind of thing. And I thought, Peter Tork was from Connecticut. He was a friend of mine. February is the anniversary of his passing. It's also his birthday month. I thought it would be a shame to not do something, so we're putting together a very special, more homey, grassroots type of fan-friendly convention for one day only, February 8th, in Connecticut.
I can't remember if I knew that he was from Connecticut or not. I thought he was from California, but he grew up in Connecticut. Is that it?
Yeah, he lived in Connecticut most of his life. He passed in Connecticut. His family were all Connecticut. His dad was a University of Connecticut professor. So yeah, Connecticut was definitely his roots. And he probably played more shows. Probably California and Connecticut are probably the two states that he did most of his shows in, non-Monkees, that is, when he wasn't touring. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you had him as a guest at your events in the past. How many times did he guest for you?
Well, so interestingly enough, he was a convention guest at my Beat Expo in 2009 at a Beatles convention. Mm-hmm. But way back in 1982, he was a guest at one of my early Monkees conventions, which was at a time when it was unheard of. I mean, no Beatle would ever be at a Beatle convention. No Monkee would be at a Monkees convention. But there he was. He was the first. And for years thereafter, Mickey and Davy and Peter and even Mike would actually appear at Monkee conventions. So he was the first to ever do that. And it was in 1982 where we became close. And we became close actually on stage, Steve, because I was interviewing him for the convention. And it was only about a half-hour interview, and we're talking about all the usual, things, Monkees this, songwriting that, the other guys. And it was only a year and a half after we lost John Lennon, and the question came up about what was his feelings about the loss of John. And we only had about 4 or 5 minutes left on the interview, but that didn't stop it. Went on for about a half hour, and no one has ever spoke as beautifully, as eloquently, as poignantly about John and how great that loss was. And you couldn't hear a pin drop in the room. There were tears in the room. It was just so unbelievable and emotional. From that point on, I was hooked. I mean, Peter Tork was, high in my estimation of people.
Did I just to not to get away from Peter, but was Peter the only Monkee that appeared at your conventions?
So he was the only one who appeared at the Beatle. No, we had Davey also in the mid-'80s.
Oh wow!
Yeah, we had Davey. Was a very special guest, and he was great. He came with his whole band, and he knew the audience because he did a 3 Beatles set right in the middle. And they were both unbelievable in that they didn't just perform, they weren't just interviewed, but they sat for hours. They literally waited till every single person got an autograph. And that was in the days when the celebrities didn't charge for autographs. Mm-hmm. When we had Peter years later at the Beatles Expo in 2009, that was already when people were charging for autographs. And, it was kind of a way to make sure they came to shows was to guarantee them, a fee for signing autographs.
Right.
But in those days, it was just great to have them, and they would come because, they were great with the fans.
And you bring up an interesting point that I've noticed that you notice online is even though there's 2 left, even though it's just now Mickey and Mike, they connect with the fans. And Mike posts all the time. He just posted a lengthy statement about his feelings about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame yesterday, which, if you haven't seen it, is worth hunting down.
But it's also frustrating for those who don't agree with him.
Right. But did you you saw the statement, I assume? Did you?
I do, and I see it, and I get it, and I understand it, and he's unfortunately correct, but I still feel there's a place for a band that influenced so many new wave groups and influenced so many other musicians and were so beloved.
I agree with you completely. I think, in talking, I've broached the subject with all 4 of them, as you probably have with when you've met them. I was lucky enough to talk to all 4 of them, and I've asked them all, and they all have this very standoffish kind of defensive posture. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're not there and they don't feel like they can get there. And
right.
Basically it's because of Jan Wenner and because of the way the whole scene is set up. And
right.
I think if they were to get in, they would be very grateful. I think they really would love to get in. I think it's because they don't feel like they have a chance. And you can't blame them. They're really being excluded for no reason at all. And it's really kind of sad. It's
very sad, and I think it meant the most to Davey, who's no longer with us, so
right.
It's in a way a moot point. But the question is, Mickey Dolenz, one of the greatest pop rock vocalists in history. Mm-hmm. If he wasn't in a band, the Monkees, and he was an incredible solo artist who did hit after hit after hit, would he be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? And then Mike Nesmith, a country pop music pioneer who wrote, for the Stone Ponies, Linda Ronstadt, such great hits, and put out such a wealth of that genre of music, a la Poco or Nitty Gritty Dirt Band or Lynyrd Skynyrd or whoever came after him. Would he be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as an artist if he wasn't a Monkee? So those things, kind of play, you don't even think about those aspects of it, and it's a greater picture. But as long as they're Monkees and as long as there's a Jan Wenner, there's not going to be Monkees in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Well, and also to add about Nesmith is the elephant parts. His video pioneering too, and I believe he has gotten awarded for that, and rightfully so. But it's just really crazy. It's crazy. Let's get back to Peter though. They had him playing the dummy, the real dumb guy. And that was really, he was not dumb. Let's put it that way. He was very intelligent when you talk to him. When you talk to him, face to face. He was very intelligent and extremely intelligent.
If we can take that a step further, in any given scenario, he was probably the most intelligent person in the room at the time, and I think he knew that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you have a
very educated, very worldly, very opinionated, and just the opposite of the character he played in the show.
Can you recall any specific incidents when you interviewed him at the conventions?
Well, his vocabulary was incredible. I mean, I think he actually, at times of his life, taught in college. I mean, he was a teacher. He was very, very educated. But we would talk about so many different subjects off stage. When he was at my Beatle Expo in 2009, he was also really great. He went to some TV shows with me and actually did on-air promotions where we both, promoted the event. So we drove to the TV stations together back and forth, and we had a lot of time to chat. And, sure, he gave me some the gossip, yes, he had an affair with Janis Joplin. Yes, he
did? I didn't know that.
And yes, he did this, whatever. But what was more interesting was, how worldly, what a historian he was, what he knew about current affairs and past history, and how educated he was. It was just very, very impressive. And I think that, having to play this, kind of, monkey his whole life, I think that, might have irked him at some times, but he realized that it was his bread and butter, and he realized it was his calling.
And as far as music goes, he was incredibly knowledgeable of music. I mean, he always played the banjo, which kind of looked a little crazy with the Monkees, but that only really just showed, how musically in tune he was. I mean, he had a lot of musical knowledge. He was a very adept musician. Not to say
he's
that
a multi-instrumentalist,
right.
Banjo, bass, harpsichord, piano, keyboards, on and on, and he could play classical as well. And he hated being pigeonholed into playing, I'm a Believer and all that, because, his favorite music was blues.
Right.
And given his, choice, he would be out there with a group he put together called Shoe Suede Blues.
Right.
And play more of the rootsy rockabilly blues music. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you have. I mean, actually, there's another argument, for their being in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You have Mike, who had a career on his own before he joined the Monkees. You had Peter, who had a career on his own. You had Mickey, who, although he was basically known as an actor, also had some musical experience. And you had Davey, who was who acted, who was in Oliver and
Broadway star. That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So you had. It wasn't like the way that they were sometimes thought of as a completely bunch of four guys with nothing who just came aboard and acted. They didn't. They were they were all very talented.
Well, the biggest argument, and we could probably, I want to end with this because I don't want to dwell on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because it's very frustrating.
Sure.
But the Coasters are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The Drifters, these are great vocal bands who didn't write their music, who didn't play any instruments, but they sang the songs. How is that different than the Monkees?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anyway, yes, you're right. We'll end that there. But anyway, getting back to Peter, I mean, he was. I found him, very, very genial. He was just a very nice guy. He really was. Wasn't he? And the one thing I was going to, and I started talking about their connection with fans. I think there's a definite difference between the connection that they have with their fans and the Beatles have with their fans. I mean, obviously, we're talking about two different things here.
Leagues.
Two different leagues.
Right.
But there is right. But there's a very the Monkees, even now, I'm not sure that it was that way. In fact, I'm sure it wasn't that way, in the late '60s. But now they're very down to earth with their fans. They talk to them. There's all
Yep.
sorts of chances to meet them
Yes,
now.
absolutely.
So and even communicate with them online because they're both very active on Facebook. And Peter was and Davey was while he was still around. So yeah, it's really great that the way they've interacted with their fans, and their music is still great, and they've been working on there's been reissues and reissues and reissues. I mean, they've been making money with their reissues just like everybody else does, just like the Beatles do, just like everybody else is doing now, so
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought it would have been remiss to not do, because we did such a very successful Davy Jones Memorial Convention in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And, I understand that Davy Jones was a much larger figure in the Monkees lore and had many, many more fans, but to not do something for Peter, I think would have been unfair. And we didn't need to do it on that large of a scale, but we're doing something pretty special. And we've got a lot of bands, and we have special guests, and we have a memorabilia and all the vendor stuff. But what's really neat is we're putting together a tribute at the end, a video memorial to Peter. And some really cool people have sent in videos already, and we just started, asking out there, Gary Puckett, Tommy James, Liberty DeVito, some of the people who played with Peter, his drummer Felipe Torres, Sandy Gennaro, people who played with the Monkees and were friends with the Monkees, have thrown together, a 1-minute clip, and we're assembling it all and putting together what's going to be hopefully a very heartfelt, very warm and moving tribute to Peter, which will probably be the climax of the convention.
Who are some of the tribute groups that are going to be playing there?
Well, the headliner are the Blue Meanies, who have pretty much played a bunch of the conventions, pretty much from the past few years, mm-hmm. including the Davy Jones Memorial, both at the convention and also at B.B. King's in New York. They're kind of the go-to Monkees tribute band. They're from Staten Island and New Jersey. Then we have a group called Zilch, who are more like a high-energy, younger, real up tempo Monkees band that doesn't just play the hits, but the deeper cuts, the B-sides, the album tracks. Mick Lawless, Loose Salute, was originally a Nesmith tribute band, and what he does is he kind of country versions the Monkees songs, and he's going to be there. And the opening act is John Sheridan, who, believe it or not, was the only musical act who used to play in the days before Monkee tribute bands, back in the late 70s when the conventions first started in New Jersey, by a gal named Maggie McManus, who published the Monkey Business fanzine. He was the musical act. It was John Sheridan and his guitar doing Monkee songs. And we brought him back, and so we're really happy that he's, after all these years, coming back to do his show. It sort of brings things full circle. And those are pretty much the 4 musical acts. We're working on someone else who hasn't been confirmed yet. But those are the ones who are in place, and it's a real variety of musical choices. It's the regular cover band, the high energy one, the country version, and then the solo kickback.
Maggie McManus, there's a great name from the past. Is she going to be there?
Yeah, I hope so. We certainly invited her. This is what I'm going for. When Maggie used to do the conventions in New Jersey, and it was in a time when the Monkees had no respect.
Right.
And, this was before the 86 reunion, before MTV, before that was then, this is now, before the Renaissance. And the only people who went were the 50 or 100, true diehard fans who showed up at the Trenton War Memorial and, watched Head together, bought, the Coal Gem albums, and pretty much heard John Sheridan play. 1982, I said, Maggie, let's bring this to another level. I was doing the Beatle conventions by then, and I had a little more expertise and a little larger of a show. And she and I combined forces. We brought the show to Connecticut, and that's where Peter Tork was our special guest. We did it again the next year in Hartford, Connecticut, and brought in Bill Chadwick, who was a Beatles producer. The Monkees producer. Wrote a song or two for the Monkees. Was a close friend of theirs, and really brought it up, from 50 or 100 people to a few hundred people, and then jump ahead to '86. And then all of a sudden, everywhere you look, it's the Monkees. The Monkees at Disneyland, and they're on the charts again. All that was very, very exciting. We did a convention that Maggie was not quite involved with. It was in '87, and it was called the National Monkees Convention. And it was very, very special, Steve, because it was Mickey, Peter, Davy, and Boyce and Hart.
Wow.
All at one convention, which was, that was so historic. And shortly after that, Maggie kind of dropped out. She stopped publishing her magazine and sort of, led a normal life, so to speak. Which
what was the name of her magazine? I was going to ask you about her magazine. What was the name of her magazine?
Monkees Business Fanzine.
Okay, because I remember seeing that, and it seems I may have some of those issues somewhere, but I do remember that, and that's where
it was the Bible for Monkey fans. I mean, the way I saw it, you have Good Day Sunshine if you're a Beatles fan, and you have Monkees Business Fanzine if you're a Monkees fan, and that covers it. But Maggie was great. She kept the spirit and the music, and she kept the Monkees alive for the fans for the years where it was dark and bleak and there really was no contact.
Right.
Don't forget, there was no internet. There was no way to keep in touch. There was no way to and she would, get the fanzine out every other month. She did an unbelievable job. You can't say enough about Maggie McManus's contribution to Monkees fandom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was a real pioneer as far as that goes, as were you. But I hope she shows up for you. I do. Yeah, I mean it's great that you're doing this tribute to him. He definitely deserves it, and it was great to see after he passed the great outpouring of love. Among not only among Monkees fans, but the public in general who got to know him through the show.
Yes.
There was really this big, this, like I said, this big love thing, and he deserved it. It's too bad that it kind of didn't really happen that much while he was alive, although, the way the Monkees, promoted themselves in the past few years, they have gotten more love, and they've pushed themselves hard, especially with the album, or I should say albums that they've put out, the new albums.
And they've been great. They put out the Good Time album was amazingly great, great pop stuff, right up there with the best of the early Monkey stuff. And their Christmas album is really solid. I mean, it's a great album. Unwrap You for Christmas is one of Mickey's gems. And if people haven't heard either one of them, they really should check them out. They'd be surprised.
Yeah, those albums are really good. They're really, really good. And they've continued. Especially Mickey, both Mickey and Mike have been putting out new music, actually newer and old music. Mike's been doing a lot of reissue stuff and putting out old concerts that haven't been out before, and Mickey's been, I think he's got another show on Broadway coming up, but he's been doing a lot of stuff over the years.
Yeah. Very true, yeah.
They've definitely been keeping it going. Would I be wrong to ask you if there will be a Monkee at your convention?
So there won't. We actually unfortunately planned the event long time ago on this particular date. Mickey had Arizona. He's doing a symphony show where he's playing with a whole symphonic orchestra in Arizona on the same date. So no, but I'll tell you, we've got some interesting guests who've never been at any kind of event like this before, and they're pretty obscure. So a true fan, is who knows Peter's history and has probably followed the different variations of his bands will be pleased that we've gotten Reinhard Straub, who is the electric violinist in the New Monks.
Oh my gosh.
To be one of our guests. Yeah, he played on Stepping Stone and Higher and Higher, which was the 1981 New Monks single. He also toured with them. He's going to be there. A gal named Wendy Erdman, who was friends with the Torkelsons from birth. I mean, she was pretty much friends of the Tork family growing up. Mm-hmm. They grew up together. She became a singer, recorded an album, and sure enough, Nick, who was Peter's brother...
Oops. Okay, we're back after a technical disruption here. You were giving us the name of your guests. So go ahead and start.
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and start that again, Charles?
Well, Steve, so like the earliest conventions where we try to find pretty much obscure people who true fans would know about if you followed Peter Tork's career. He had different bands through the years besides the Monkees. And in 1981, it was Peter Tork and the New Monks. Mm-hmm. And they put out some singles, they recorded, they toured, and his electric violinist by the name of Reinhard Straub, we dug him up, and we saw that his name was sure enough on the credit for the 45 Stepping Stone, Higher and Higher. We invited him. He's coming, and he was a friend of Peter's and actually went through AA with Peter together and has a lot of great stories to tell. But he played live with him and recorded with him, and he's one of our guests. Another guest is a gal by the name of Wendy Erdman. Wendy was a friend of the Torkelsons growing up. She was from birth. Her and Peter and Peter's family grew up together, celebrated birthdays together. Turns out she became a singer and recorded an album in around 1970. And both Peter and his brother Nick recorded on that album. So her album called self-titled Wendy Erdman, they're both on that album. It's a real rarity if anyone wants to Google that. She's coming. She's one of our guests. And another guest so far over the three we've gotten so far is Danny G., who was Peter Tork's sound man for the Peter Tork Project. It was around 83 where Jerry Renino brought the Peter Tork Project to Danny's studio to rehearse these guys. The band solidified. Danny recorded some of their tunes. He went on the road with them. He actually wound up going to Japan with them and then became a drummer and played with the band. So Danny G., whose real name is Danny Girolando, has a lot of great stories to tell about the Peter Tork Project and going to Japan and all that, and he's our other guest. So those are the three guests so far, and we have a few in the pipeline that we hope we're going to sign before the actual convention.
Okay. And the convention is what date?
It's Saturday, February 8th. It's in North Haven, Connecticut at the Best Western Plus Hotel. Hours are 1 o'clock to 8 o'clock with we have a VIP early bird noon opening for, the real serious collectors who want to get in before everybody else and get their first pickings with the vendors.
Okay. And how do people get tickets?
They go to www.monkeesfanconvention.com, or they can call us at 203-795-4737. But I think it's easier to remember the website, which is monkeesfanconvention.com. There's a link to the tickets. It's got all the information about the event. And we sure hope a lot of people come just to support the memory of Peter Tork, the music, the life of Peter, and just enjoy the Monkees music together with fellow fans.
Is there anything that I didn't ask you about that you want to mention as far as the show goes? Yeah,
when Peter passed, on his website, the Torkelson family indicated that they have a family charity called the IMA, which is the Institute for Music in Massachusetts. and we contacted them, and we decided that that would also be the beneficiary of the convention itself.
Oh, cool.
So not only do a portion of proceeds from tickets benefit the IMA, but we're having a charity auction, and part of that charity auction will benefit the IMA as well. And the Peter Tork's family is going to actually be selling some items at the convention, including Peter's original upright piano.
Oh, really?
So it's a lot of really exciting stuff.
Wow, that should be a headline.
That's
there.
Pretty special.
Yeah, that is pretty special. That's fantastic. Thank you for mentioning that. Okay, Charles, this has been fun, and since this is a Beatles show, we should probably do a little mention about your Beatles tours. When's the next one?
That'd be great.
When's the next one?
Right?
When's the next one?
We do it every single summer during Beatles Week, which is in August.
Right.
And we're having it August 24th to September 2nd, where we go to London and Liverpool. We also do a side trip to Henley to visit George's home. And this is we've been doing this going on close to 40 years of bringing thousands and thousands of fans over to the Beatles' homeland, visiting all their every place you could imagine. You know, whether you've seen it in the books, whether you've read about it, whether you've seen it on postcards or heard it in the songs, from Penny Lane to Strawberry Fields to Abbey Road. We do it all, and what's best is we do it as a group. So you're with fellow fans, you're safe, and you just have the greatest time. And if anyone wants to join us, it's so simple, liverpooltours.com. And I appreciate you including that, because as much as I love the Monkees and I'm holding my hand as high as I can, well, I hold the Beatles up a little higher because, again, a different league and a different planet, of course.
Yeah, you and I, we should tell the personal story. You and I I believe we've only run into each other once, correct?
Right.
And
yes.
that was in Las Vegas to see Paul McCartney at the Joint.
At the Joint.
And
correct.
And that was. Not only was that a spectacular show, it was loud. My ears are still ringing from that thing. I mean, it was a tiny little room, and he had the amps turned up all the way.
Yeah, he had them as high as if he was at an outdoor 60,000 venue.
Yeah, he really did. He really did, and it was a wonderful show. Have not seen a soundboard recording of that floating around, but I have seen some audience recordings floating around, and it was fun. That was a lot of fun. I remember we were standing in the middle there, weren't we? Right near the soundboard.
That's exactly where we were.
Right.
It was a great venue and a great night.
And
we
could see him really well, and there were people like right underneath him. They were, touching within, they could reach out their hands and shake his hand. I mean, they were that close to him. He was right there. It was amazing. That was.
I know we couldn't talk during the show, but we talked before and after.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, we
all we did was stand and smile and watch it and love it.
Yeah. That was one show I will not forget. It was fantastic. And even now, I mean, you have to, the years have gone by and he's gotten older, but there's still this magic. I mean, you could say what you want about certain aspects of the show now, and some people usually do, but the magic is still there. And
right.
And it's amazing, because when I saw him in San Jose last summer, you sit there and you wait, and the lights go down, and he comes on the stage, and it's like there's this rush that goes through you. It's like you're looking at Paul McCartney, and Paul McCartney is looking at you, and he was trying, and in that big, this was inside the San Jose, I can't remember, they've changed the name, arena. And that's a big place. But he was looking at all sorts of people and pointing, and he was doing his best trying to interact with the crowd, and he was, and it's amazing. It's amazing that he still does that. But anyway, I was just to get back to the Beatle tours. We should do a whole thing on the Beatle tours and the stories from the Beatle tours. But I have to ask you. You said you go by George's house. What has happened when you go by George's house?
Well, so we go to Henley,
right,
which is where his home is.
Right.
We don't enter his house because it's a gigantic estate, which is gated, which we go to. But what happens is when you go to London and you go to Liverpool, you're going to New York, you're going to L.A., you're going to Chicago, you're going to giant metropolitan cities, which are, massive. And we want to give people who come on the tour a taste of a quaint British village, which is what George loved about Henley. So we go to the town, we stop at the pub where he drank, we visit the church where Dusty Springfield across the street where her ashes are, and we go through the town. So that's the magic of Henley. But of course, the highlight is going up to his estate, which is Friar Park, which he affectionately called Cracker Box Palace.
Right.
And we go up to the gate. We can light a candle. We can leave flowers. In the past, gardeners have come out and either greeted us or thrown us away. But we do pay our respects, and we see the front building, which is sort of a miniature version of the giant mansion that's further on inside, which you don't have access to.
Right. Well, when we need to do a show about the stories from the tour and your encounters with the Beatles.
Definitely.
And there have been some, correct?
Yeah, some amazing stories.
Yep. Well, we'll put that on the list, and we'll do that at some point. Charles, this has been fun. Good luck with the Monkees convention, and folks, if you are in the area or you can get to the area, go to that Peter Tork tribute on February 8th. And it sounds like it'll be a great time. So,
thank you so much, Steve.
You're welcome, Charles. We hope you enjoyed that interview. Charles mentioned during the discussion we had that Peter Tork had appeared at his Beat Expo in 2009. If you've ever heard Peter interviewed, you know he had a very wry sense of humor. Here are a couple of examples of that. First is a brief audio clip of Peter at Beat Expo talking about both the Beatles and the Monkees, and it shows how much respect he had for both the Fabs and the Monkees.
This next song was on the B-side of the first single put out by that group who followed the group we are honoring tonight. Yes, we were the Prefab Four. I never get tired of that joke. It's funnier all the time. Glad to have been so. Really, in some ways, the thing that I treasure the most is that we swept the spirit of the times into television, into and through television, and we were lucky to do that. I'm very conversant with those songs. I'm going to do another song from that group to which I used to belong, which will remain anonymous. Monkees Anonymous, a 12-step group for recovering. Hi, my name is Peter. I'm a recovering monkey. I'm friends of Bill's and Lois's and whoever else. Hi, Peter. Okay, this is a different version from the way it appears on the B side of the single. I don't know why. It's just the way I wound up doing it.
If you hadn't guessed, he was talking about the song "Take a Giant Step." That was the one he was about to perform. Next is a portion of a TV interview that Peter and Charles did to promote that 2009 Beat Expo that Charles mentioned in the interview. And here Peter talks more about the Beatles and the Monkees, and they're looking at images during the taping of the interview, and that's what they're referring to.
Hey, I'm an idol to Beatle fans because I shook their hand.
That's something.
It's something in my life. I'm telling you that much. I've never washed it again. The flu.
It's a little too late, I think.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, I suppose. I was a total Beatles fan. The whole thing about I was a folkie when they were first exploding on the scene. I thought, man, that looks like a lot of fun, and such it has proved to be. Actually, I have to say, when to the extent that I've shared their experience, it's been an awful lot of fun. Look at them. Don't they look like they're having fun? Wrong answer.
At that very moment,
Yeah,
maybe
no,
not.
Maybe not. Yeah, right.
But you talk about this British invasion thing certainly had an impact on your career as a young man with the Monkees.
The whole 60s thing, the Monkees TV show, as everybody pretty much knows, was a television version of the Beatles' Hard Day's Night. Meant to be a little irreverent, a little anarchic, and it succeeded maybe beyond its wildest dreams. Oh, look, our album covers. I've never seen those before. And we were very lucky to catch the same wave.
Sure.
After the Beatles sort of let go of it. That wave kept going, and we said, we'll take it, thanks a lot, and off we went. It was, man, I can't believe those silly people. Look at that screen.
Yeah, but they're lovable, silly people.
And finally, here's a clip of an interview we did with Peter in 2013, where he talks about the Beatles as he knew them, with a special focus on his friendship with Ringo. Do you have any anecdotes about them that you could say?
Well, gosh, sure. I'll tell you one of my favorites is post Beatles. Nicky Davey and I did a commercial with Ringo Starr.
Oh, yes.
It was a Pizza Hut commercial, I think.
Right.
Ringo goes around saying, it's time I'll tell the lads, it's time to eat your pizza crust first. Because they put cheese in the crust for a little while. That was their riff. And
Right.
the Monkees come out and he says, he looks at the audience and says, wrong lads. And hey, Ringo, it's like pretty good stuff, Ringo. How you doing, pal? And it's pretty wacko. And we were shooting the commercial. In one section, Ringo's sitting at his drums, and we're just there working on the shot. The cameraman's doing some talking with the director, and we're just standing there. And Ringo says something droll, and I said, Ringo, you're just a musician. We're the comedians. We'll do the humor. Ringo said, "Oh, been funny. People have laughed at my jokes."
Yeah, that's typical.
He's very droll. He is actually he's grand. We've had occasion for our paths to cross on a couple of occasions, and he's always. When I met them all at the first occasion, John and Paul and George met Mickey and me, and I think one of the others of us. I can't remember for sure. And Ringo wasn't there, and George the next day took me to Ringo's house, and I will tell you that I think of the four of them, Ringo has and remains the one with the least agenda. He just he deals with his life as he finds it. He doesn't have an idea of what's supposed to be or who he's supposed to be or any of those kinds of things. The other three did to a much greater extent anyway. Ringo's always been the most human as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
Anyway, that's my story. That's the best story I got for the moment.
And here's a little bit of news. Variety reported on January 28th that a preview of Peter Jackson's reboot of Let It Be was recently shown in L.A. The audience was asked not to film or photograph the segment, which was introduced by Apple Records chief Jeff Jones. Jim Aswad of Variety quoted Jones as saying, "We have created a brand new film that will attempt to bust the myth that the Let It Be sessions were the final nail in the Beatles' coffin." Variety noted that the preview showed clips that were brighter both visually and spiritually, to use their word, with many shots of the Beatles joking around, making fun of each other, and singing in silly accents, and generally indulging in vintage mop-top hijinks. The film also includes scenes of the Beatles in previously unreleased song clips of what would become the Abbey Road album. And just for a couple of whispers, our sources are telling us to look for a Ravi Shankar Live in Copenhagen release, and that the upcoming Flaming Pie box will have extras in the UMS store. And it also looks like there will be a McCartney Record Store Day release coming in April. Our very, very special thanks to Charles Rosenay for being such a great guest on today's show. Thank you, Charles. And that's it for today. Remember, you can find our shows on the great Fab4 Radio, iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. Look for our Beatle News and Information group on Facebook and join us. Also check out our That's What I Want Beatles store page on Facebook for great deals for yourself or your favorite Beatle fan, and links to my ebook, Meet a Monkey Davy Jones, and Candy Leonard's Beatleness. And if you like us, please subscribe to this podcast. We'll be looking forward to seeing you next time. Till that next time, this is Steve Marinucci saying,
Be seeing you.
Keep that one. Mark it fab.